Hey Now.
Hey Now.
Yeah, there it is. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today's podcast is going to be full of information that not only should you know, also full of things that we can discuss. There was a ton of things that came up yesterday, and my job here every single day is to bring you the news, not just the way the mainstream media news presents it to you, but with a lot more audio, a lot more context, and even some discussion as well. Yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford did a doozy of a news conference. I mean, wow. We got to talk about this involving changes to the Ontario Student Assistance Program. This is help with tuition and also with regard to holidays. We just went through the Family Day holiday in Ontario where people were supposed to get a day off. This is a holiday that was created under the former Ontario Liberal government, and so far, Doug Ford has left it alone. But it sounds like he may want to rip it up. Let's start off with Premier Doug Ford yesterday at Queen's Park talking about the Family Day holiday.
And hope everyone had a great Family Day weekend. Probably going to get in trouble by my team, but I'm going off topic here for a second. I got so many people wanting to go to shopping malls. And Yorkdale would have been packed. Sherway would have been packed. Mississauga Square 1 would have been packed. And I always say everyone deserves a rest, right? Take your holidays. But there are a whole bunch of people that want to get that little extra overtime, getting paid double time and a half. They get their regular statutory 8 hours, and then they get another time and a half for anything that they work. So even if someone's making $20 an hour, now you get to go in and make $50 an hour. But that would be up to companies to decide. But that would probably add close to a million working hours that people can pocket. So just throwing that out there. So we'll look into it and find out how realistic it is. I know the Eaton Centre was open, and people in the suburbs are saying, why do I have to go downtown? Why can't I go to Yorkdale? But it would have been packed yesterday. But anyways, it was a great weekend, and we worked, at least I did. I worked on the weekend. There was no Family Day for myself, just returning calls, listening to people.
All right, I'm going to pause Premier Doug Ford there and take in some of what he just said. Ontario Premier Doug Ford musing about possibly ripping up the Family Day holiday. Family Day, and as Doug quite rightly pointed out at the beginning of his remarks, is a much needed day off for a lot of people. See, back when this holiday in February was created, it was the government of the day realizing that in the dead of winter, people could use a break, a little day off that they can do things with their family. There's no school and people are off work, so they can go out and do some of the things that they want to do as a family, whether it be outdoor activities, maybe a little ice skating, what have you. Doug Ford doesn't like it because he heard from somebody who wanted to go shopping and couldn't go to the mall. And I'm wondering, does Doug Ford understand what a statutory holiday even means? I mean, he said it. People like a little time off. Well, then he said, well, use your holiday time for that. Sounds like he doesn't like the idea of the Family Day holiday, and I have a problem with that because I like the spirit of Family Day, and I think by and large, most people do. It's a day off. You don't have to go to work, by and large. I mean, there's always going to be some people that have to work on a holiday, first responders and so on and so forth, lines crews that keep the lights on. Yes, some people have to work and they're paid appropriately for that. But for anyone who doesn't have to work, you just have to plan it in advance a little bit, get whatever shopping done you need to get done the day before, and then you enjoy the holiday. Doug Ford seems to think that that day is done, that we don't need a holiday anymore. People would rather go and shop. Or he thinks that office workers deserve a holiday, but retail workers do not deserve a holiday. That's what I'm taking from what the premier just said. If you heard something different, feel free to slide into my DMs. We can make this a collaborative approach. But frankly, I'm kind of shocked that this is what he opened with. Well, there's some people who'd like to earn more money. No doubt about that. We can certainly talk about wages and so on and so forth. But to take away a holiday or to give employers the ability to compel workers to work on a day when everybody else is off. Is that really where we want to go? Or can we just hold some things sacred? Scheduled holidays, the statutory ones. Everybody gets a day off, and we have them for different reasons throughout the year. We celebrate different things. In February, it's Family Day, and people are supposed to take the day off and take stock of their family situation, do something nice, some bonding, whatever it is. They're supposed to spend time with family. Doug Ford thinks, the mall should be open. I wonder what else he thinks should be open. Here's more of the Premier.
Right off the hop, I got a lot of calls from students about OSAP. And there were interesting calls. I returned every one with a standard statement, but I wasn't getting hundreds, I was getting thousands. But I get quite a few all the time, and trying to just explain that, the situation that Ontario was facing wasn't sustainable any longer. We're putting in, by next year, $7 billion a year into our colleges and universities. I reminded a lot of the students that, I fought for them for 7.5 years, not letting universities and college raise tuition. And I don't think anyone had a problem with that, but I was getting massive pressure from the sector to do that. And finally, we did it, and then OSAP as well. That created a problem when federal government cut off foreign students coming in, so it really hurt a lot of colleges and universities. I support the students, our number one selling feature when companies come from around the world. I'm always saying we have the brightest and best students, the brightest and best colleges and universities in the world. But when you're in the hole, $2.5 billion, it wasn't realistic. Now we've brought that middle of the pack. We're still giving more OSAP loans than BC and Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Doug Ford trying to justify the indefensible at this point. For those who don't know or didn't hear my comments on this yesterday, it's very simple. What the Ontario government has done is lifted a 7-year tuition freeze, and they're going to allow universities and colleges to raise tuition 2% every year. Now, that's going to be a financial hit to families that they were not budgeting for. The Premier gave no notice about this, and there was zero consultation on this. Apparently, he was lobbied by the education industry, and he caved. That is what the Premier basically just said. He was under intense pressure, and he said it wasn't sustainable the way things were. Okay, well, let's talk about that, because I think this is a topic that a lot of people should be interested in, particularly students and families that have kids that will go on to get a post-secondary education. Doug Ford bragging about the well-educated workforce. I mean, he's going to have to drop that talking point soon, because basically what Doug Ford has done here is he has said that if you come from money, you can go to university and get on the path to a white-collar job. If you don't come from money, you are going to go into the trades. That's just all there is to it. And some people might say, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with the trades. Yeah, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to do that. There's also some incredibly intelligent young people out there that don't happen to come from money. And frankly, I don't know how you tell them, even though you're qualified to be a chemical engineer. You're qualified to be a computer scientist. You don't have the money, so you're going to be a plumber. You don't have the money, so you're going to be a bricklayer. You're going to hang drywall because your family doesn't have money. That's basically what we've done here. And I don't even know if Doug Ford understands that. This is the problem. Ontario has OSAP, and that is where students, as teenagers, can apply for massive loans and take on massive debt. And it's basically very few questions asked. So you've got students who were able to get these loans and use them for their tuition. The problem here is that up to 80% of it used to be available as a grant. Doug Ford has wound that back from 80% to 25%. That means that students are going to be taking on incredible amounts of debt, even more than they were, if they want to have a post-secondary education in a field of their choosing. It's going to be real expensive for families, really expensive. And I'm not surprised when Doug here says he got thousands of phone calls, because this is a punch in the gut to families in Ontario. And I really don't know how with a straight face he can look into the camera and just say this so casually. Oh, it wasn't sustainable. I mean, this is the guy who spent epic amounts of money during COVID-19. Spare no expense was his motto. Now, all of a sudden, we're watching every penny.
I mentioned to the students, you have to invest in your future, into in-demand jobs, because a lot of the students, I'm not one to say, like you're picking basket weaving courses, and there's not too many baskets being sold out there. Go into healthcare, go into trades, go into jobs of the future. Focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are where the jobs are, and then we're accountable to the taxpayers too. They want to know the courses these students are picking and that the taxpayers are paying, that they're actually going to graduate and move forward in that sector that we need.
Doug Ford will pick the winners and losers. There is clearly no appetite for anyone to go into the arts in any way anymore. Doug Ford thinks that the future is what you should be thinking of, and I don't even disagree with him on that particular point. I think students, when they're deciding what they want to get for a degree or a diploma, should probably give some thought to job prospects down the line. Doug Ford is saying there's too many people that were taking too many courses that are not in demand in the job market, and that wasn't responsible use of taxpayer money. Arguably, he's right. Arguably. However, that would be more of an OSAP issue as opposed to a student issue. You know, in any other scenario, if you want to borrow money, they want to know what you want the money for, what your plan is to repay it. Those are the basics that a bank would ask you. OSAP, clearly, under Doug Ford's watch here, he's been premier for years. There's people taking courses that he feels have no future, and OSAP is still giving them the money. Isn't that something that screams OSAP needs reform then? Couldn't we have found a compromise here where we didn't take money directly out of families' pockets and where we didn't pile massive amounts of debt onto students who are already fighting a terrible job market and a cost of living crisis and housing unaffordability like we've never seen before? Wouldn't it make more sense to just reform OSAP? So that if you do need a student loan and you want to go into, I don't know, fine arts. Doug didn't mention the arts were in demand, so I'll assume they're not in demand. But let's say you want a degree in fine arts. You go to OSAP with your plan. Hey, here's my job prospects after I graduate. Give me a loan. And they say, nope, that's not an in-demand field. So we'll give you a loan for just the base amount. The rest of it, you're on your own. If you want to go into healthcare or STEM, like the premier suggested, then you should still be able to get those maximum level grants. Doug Ford is throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. He feels there's no room for compromise. And you know what? The ironic part is, even if he's right, he's certainly not right now. Because right now, there are way too many expenses and too much headwater that students have got to swim upstream against for him to drop this on them now. You know, there's a lot of parents who have been saving since the day their kid was born for post-secondary. Now you're going to tell them, oh yeah, the price is going way up and your kid's going to take on even more debt. It's pure insanity. We either do or we don't care about education in Canada. Now, this is specifically in Ontario, but I have a feeling we're going to be having these discussions across Canada. Do we or don't we prioritize it? Is there some common sense in the way that we hand out the loans that we could apply here to make sure that taxpayers get good value for the money and that we're graduating people into in-demand fields and meeting them where they're at? If they don't want to go into one of those in-demand fields, maybe they get a little less as far as OSAP funding is concerned. To simply cut it from 80% to 25% is bananas. You know, it's not very often that I find myself agreeing with the Ontario Liberals, but the ones that I've seen that are furious about this, I happen to agree with them. This is not the right time to be making massive changes like this, and especially with no notice.
So I'll always be there to invest in colleges and universities. Again, I think this year or coming year will be up to $7 billion. That's $3 billion more than the previous Liberal government. And so I'll continue supporting and fighting for students, even though they're probably upset right now. But I've heard some nightmare stories on the other side as well about kids going out there buying fancy watches and cologne and not needing it, and families making $200,000 getting their kids' education. That doesn't fly with the taxpayers, I'll tell you that.
Well, maybe that's a problem with the system that you've been running for years, Doug Ford. If that doesn't fly with the taxpayers, then fix the system. And by the way, students spending money on cologne and watches and things like that, I'll point out that it's incredibly difficult for them to get a job, first and foremost. Number two, in a lot of cases, the money just goes directly to the school. So I'm not even sure how that makes sense. Listen, we're making education even less attainable than it already is. And it's basically a prerequisite to get most jobs out there. I really don't understand how this extreme decision was made with no notice and no consultation. It is bananas to me. But again, I'm not surprised to hear families have been phoning Doug Ford all weekend. They are mad, and they have every right to be.
Family Day holiday, what were you getting?
Oh, no, not repealing everyone. I love that. The only one good thing the Liberals ever did is bring in Family Day. That's it.
All right, so what were you getting at then?
All I'm getting at is, should be the option number one of the people that work in the retail sector and not be forced, and we would cover them to make sure there's no ramifications. But there's a ton of people out there that want to earn $50 an hour that are making $20 an hour and getting double time and a half. They want to put a shift in, and I think it would, well, I know it would add to our GDP, and would give probably upwards to 1 million working hours that people might not otherwise do. There's so many people right now that had to work Family Day, no matter if it's our healthcare workers or our police or firefighters, paramedics, people that work in the Eaton Center, people that work in the small stores. But I'm going to throw it out there, and nothing's guaranteed. I'll talk to the retail council. I'll talk to the big ones, you know, all the food retailers, be it the Walmarts, Loblaw shop, you know, all of them. Home Depots. I wanted to go to Home Depot yesterday. It was closed.
Well, Doug Ford clearly not understanding how a statutory holiday works if he wanted to go to Home Depot and was surprised to see that it's closed. Yeah, because it's a holiday. That's the point of the holiday. People are supposed to take time off. Doug Ford saying we may have to make some changes. He wants to consult with them about that. The retail council and the restaurants. And why? Why can't you just leave it alone? Doug said, I love Family Day. Then let people stay home with their families. It's not a big deal to close things down one day. One day. That's all it is. You can shop 7 days a week. You can somewhere 365 days a year go shopping. It may not be the closest shopping center to you, but that's part of the point of having a holiday. I really don't understand why he wants to go down this road, but I think he's really tempting fate on this one. I mean, generally speaking, Family Day is there for a reason. He again points out, wow, you know, some people had to work, the healthcare workers and the first responders and the paramedics. Yeah, and they get paid for that very well. They do. That's also part of the job. I don't get certain days off that other people do. And I chose to get into my profession knowing that I would be required to work certain days a year. And that's just all there was to it when I got into my field. I accepted that and I got into it. In a lot of ways, first responders do the exact same thing. And you know what? Not all of them do. In a lot of cases, it's a seniority thing. And after a while, you just don't have to work on Christmas anymore. You don't have to work on New Year's Eve anymore. You work your way up through the ranks. But somebody has to work so that the rest of us can have the day off. I really don't understand why the premier wants to go down this road, but I'm a little discouraged by this. Let people have a day off. And you know what? If he changes it, we're going to protect people. Don't worry. If you don't want to work, you don't have to work. Bullshit. I'm calling it right now. Say no to your boss and see how far that gets you. Hey, we really need you to work because we really want to open up on Family Day. You say, I'd really rather spend the day with my family. Okay, they're not going to forget that. In some ways, some people will be punished for that. Some people are going to feel compelled to work on a day when they shouldn't have to work. There's very few days where stores and what have you are expected to be closed. And they're closed on those days for a reason. Taking away Family Day? He can say all he wants. I'm not taking it away. He basically is.
How many jobs were you actually able to secure with this new?
Well, if I didn't speak up, I'll tell you, we wouldn't have anything. It's $23 million that we were able to get off them. I want to thank Crown Royal, by the way, for sitting down and negotiating. I kept saying, day after day, every time I came out, please help me help you. And they finally came to the table. And, for the people in Amherstburg, where they're getting about roughly $500,000 directly dollars for investment in creating new opportunities for companies to come here, and as well another $500,000 over to Windsor, Essex, that falls into that jurisdiction. And we've mentioned to my Minister of Economic Development, Amherstburg is the highest priority right now because we have so many inquiries from around the world. Make sure you showcase that great community, showcase the people, and hopefully we're going to be able to fill that empty building.
Do you have an estimate of how many jobs roughly?
Well, I know that quite a few of them went down to the Stellantis plant. I want to thank Stellantis. They're adding 1,700 jobs.
I'm going to cut the premier off here. The question was, how many jobs got created because of this deal that he did with Diageo to keep Crown Royal in stores? He shook them down for $23 million, and you just heard him say, the community that lost that bottling plant, $500,000. The greater area, another $500,000. Where's the other $22 million going, and how many jobs are going to be saved here? The premier can't answer that question. Moving on.
Conservative MP Jamil Javani said Canadians are shooting ourselves in the foot with anti-American pissy fits. He was talking about you.
Well, I something, I really don't care what he says about me because I gave him the chance. No one would even know who Jamil Javani was unless I hired the guy in my office. I didn't know him from a hole in the ground. But in saying that, I am happy that he went down in the U.S. I'm happy when I see other premiers go down to the U.S. and lobby. But no, I don't call it a hissy fit. What I call is making sure we communicate with the American people like I just did half an hour ago with the former governor, and continue advocating to our American friends that as we get closer to this Kuzma deal, that our voice is being heard in the U.S. and make sure that the administration in the U.S. understands it's going to hurt Americans. Tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people. As simple as that. They need to take the Ronald Reagan approach. You can't unscramble an egg. You got to make the omelet larger, my favorite saying, especially in the auto sector.
The comment in question was to do with what Jamil Javani said when he was doing some U.S. media. As you know, Jamil Javani, he went down to the U.S. He is a good friend of the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance. He got access to the White House. He met with President Trump. That's further than most Canadian politicians have made it. The only Canadian politicians that have had any luck getting that far in order were Justin Trudeau, Danielle Smith from Alberta, Mark Carney, and Jamil Javani. By the way, the comment that Jamil made that a lot of people are flipping out about, listen to this.
We are shooting ourselves in the foot if we continue this anti-America, hissy fit. And this is the kind of reason I'm trying to talk to our government and some of the Liberals who have just gone way off the reservation on this. And, the ball is in Prime Minister Mark Carney's court. Like, I've offered to help him. I think it'd be awesome if we went down there together. I think we'd get a lot done working together. But he's got to decide whether that's something he wants to do or not.
That's the comment that so many people are upset about, suggesting that Liberals are throwing a hissy fit when it comes to Donald Trump, when really we should just sit down with the Americans and work out a deal. They want to work out a deal. The problem is, I'm not so sure that we want to work out a deal because it is much better politically for the people who want to hang on to power if things are not going well with the U.S. For some reason, Canadians keep voting for that. We don't want to deal with America. At the end of the day, I think we're going to want to deal with America. It's really just a matter of how long we want to drag this out. Jamil even offered to help there. I don't really have a position one way or the other on him going down to the States, but Doug Ford is right when he says that anybody who's got a relationship and a voice in America should use it to try and get rid of the tariffs.
Pressure from students calling you and telling you made the wrong decision.
Well, I understand. I fully understand that some kids need it. There will be still 25% grants available. I had some students, international students, come by my office this morning, and I think one gal from Netherlands was saying, no, they don't get 85% across the board on everything. They were actually probably a little shocked. They're more focused over in the Netherlands on key areas that will help the economy or be it healthcare or other sectors, jobs of the future. So we're still going to be there. We're still going to put unprecedented amounts of investments into our universities and colleges. And I just wish the students knew how hard I fought for 7.5 years. When I first came into office, I knocked their tuition down 10%. And under massive pressure from the heads of the colleges and universities, I refused to increase their tuition and added OSAP up to 85% grants. Folks, it was in the red. It's just not sustainable. And the sector was telling me it's not sustainable, or we'd be closing down, if we continue going, we'd be closing down colleges and university. I think it was accepted by the general public because they're paying the bills. And I just emphasize to the students, please look at a course that's going to be a priority when you get out of school, and try to support them any way you can. So that's what I'm focused on right now, and I believe that the students will focus and be more accountable.
I think they're just going to skip university altogether. I mean, it's just way too expensive. And frankly, asking a student to agree to take on that much debt and then aggressively collecting it like they do is just not something that most students want to do. It's very simple what Doug Ford is doing. As I said at the beginning, and I'll just put a bow on this, it's very simple. If you come from money, and again, it has nothing to do with your grades. If you come from money, you can go to university and get a white-collar job. If you don't have money, you will go into the trades. That is exactly what Doug Ford is saying. You are condemned to going into the trades, whether you want to or not, whether you'd be good at it or not, whether you're smart enough to have that STEM job or not. If you don't have money, you're done. It's over. He does not care. Rather than fix what he says is broken, he's going to scrap the whole thing altogether. Grants go from 80 to 25%, and colleges and universities, who he says lobbied him aggressively, can raise tuition. I don't understand why he didn't stand up for students. You know, this is a guy who says he's for the people, he's for the middle class, he's for the families. This is a punch in the gut for middle class families with no notice. I honestly don't know who's advising him. I don't know why he doesn't ask for consultation with stakeholders. I don't know why he is not interested in hearing the other side of it or hearing how simply they could reform OSAP. Just going to take it all away, and then he's going to stand there and tell the students, you've got to be more understanding. You've got to try harder. You've got to pick better courses. This is right up there with Carney saying you have to sacrifice more. Kids have sacrificed enough. They've sacrificed enough. I'm going to move on from this news conference. I find myself bailing on them midway through more often than not because all of it is infuriating and none of it makes any sense. And by the way, one other note, Doug Ford's news conferences sound bad lately. And I don't know who's in charge of setting up the mic and speakers there at Queen's Park, but it doesn't sound good. It's all crackly. You've got the gain too high. You got to fix that. That should be an elementary thing. If you're trotting out the premier of the biggest province in the country to make announcements, we shouldn't have that crackle in the background. So maybe somebody could get on that and fix it. Anyway, I'm going to move on from Doug Ford. Listen, when it comes to families, he can say he cares all he wants, but actions speak louder than words, and that is an I don't care, emphatically. You know, when it comes to families, Family Day, I think some people should work so that people can go to the mall that's closest to them. I mean, that, again, he can say he cares about families, but actions speak louder than words, and that doesn't suggest that he cares about families or workers that deserve a day off. So form your own opinion. If you want to slide into my DMs and weigh in on this, maybe I'm off. Am I off? Am I getting something wrong here? Am I misunderstanding the situation? Let me know at Scott Fox on Air. Yesterday in Ottawa, the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, made an announcement. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I do want to get to the Prime Minister before this episode is done. He announced a new defense spending project yesterday, and we will get to that. First off, Pierre Poilievre.
There were two developments today that I felt the need to respond to. One, this morning we got some terrible news from Statistics Canada that food price inflation has now hit a spectacular 7.3%, by far the worst in the G7, twice what it is in the United States, and twice what it was when Mr. Carney took office. He promised that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store, and here we are a year later, and those prices are rising at a world-leading rate. Canadians deserve affordable food that they can enjoy with their families, food that will nourish their bodies, not hunger and desperation. What we have now is a hunger crisis in this country. 2.2 million people lined up at food banks. We've seen food prices rise at near record rates, and those prices are accelerating. And so I wrote the Prime Minister a letter today proposing emergency measures to reverse the inflationary policies that the Prime Minister and the Liberals have imposed. One, we're calling for the full elimination of the industrial carbon tax and the new fuel standard tax, which drives up the cost of fertilizer, farming, food processing. We're calling for the elimination of costly regulations that do nothing for the environment or public safety, but ban the use of plastics to preserve food. More and more food is going to waste because we're not allowed to use the best technology to preserve it, which is plastic in many cases. We also think the government needs a real plan to reverse inflationary deficits, which have doubled under Mr. Carney's watch. This money printing creates higher demand without supply and drives up the cost of everything. Finally, Mr. Carney suggested in the House of Commons that one of the causes for food price inflation is Canada's weak dollar. We're willing to work with him on policies that will strengthen our dollar, like unblocking our resources and selling them on the world market, which will create demand for the Canadian dollar, boost its buying power, and allow Canadians to buy more internationally priced goods, which includes food and fuel. We're prepared to work with anybody to achieve these things. Our vision is a country where anybody who works hard can afford a beautiful house, good food on a safe street, and we're here to provide that hope.
Okay, I think what Pierre proposed there, it's nothing new. He is now suggesting, though, that we're in a hunger crisis, and frankly, it's hard to disagree. He's right. Those food inflation numbers that came out yesterday were jaw-dropping. What I don't understand is why we can't just go back to something that worked last year. Part of the reason food inflation in January was up so much is because it's compared to last January when we had the GST holiday, which took the GST off food. Didn't everybody like that? Like, I distinctly remember for the first time in a long time, I was actually eating at restaurants again. I got some takeout here and there. It was nice to not pay tax on food. And by the way, I think servers enjoyed that because tips were a little bit better. I think restaurants enjoyed that because there was more people coming in. The bill was more affordable. Restaurant inflation yesterday was way up, like over 12%. Why can't we just kill two birds with one stone and agree that in Canada, a G7 country, an advanced industrial nation, we don't tax food? It is literally the nourishment of life. We shouldn't be making a profit off of this. No tax whatsoever on food. Cut the GST and the PST, the HST altogether. Get rid of all taxes on food. It shouldn't matter if it's pre-prepared. It does not matter. You don't pay GST at the grocery store for a chicken. But if you go to a restaurant and they've cooked it for you, you do pay GST, and it doesn't make any sense. It's the same chicken. We've got to get rid of tax on food. The government should not be making money off of something that we literally need to stay alive. One more thing from Pierre. He was asked about Jamil Javani's trip to Washington and his comment about Canadians throwing an anti-American hissy fit. Listen to this.
Canadians are legitimately upset by the unjustifiable tariffs and comments that the president has made. As the Prime Minister has said, nobody can control Donald Trump. As Mr. Harper said, we have to focus not on how the president's words and deeds make us feel, but on what we can do to adapt. And what can we do? We've got to unlock our resources, build up our strategic defense minerals, bring home the capital that's fled the country, and use that leverage to fight for tariff-free access to the United States and other markets.
Have you spoken to Mr. Giovanni about his comments?
Yes, I have.
And what was your message to him?
Well, my message is that Canadians are understandably upset about the tariffs and the comments that President Trump has made, and that we need to focus on what we can do here at home, what we can control in our own realm in order to be capable of having the leverage to negotiate tariff-free access to the U.S.
Frustrated that potentially this is like muddling the message here, the fact that you're the leader and he seems to be talking out of turn on this issue?
Well, he speaks for himself, and I speak for the party.
Do you think his trip to Washington was helpful to Canada?
Well, my view is that he represents a riding that has been disproportionately impacted by the dispute. He's from just outside of Oshawa. 1,200 Ottawa-Oshawa residents have lost their jobs in part due to the tariffs. And I think that it's necessary for all MPs to use all the connections and work that they can in order to overturn the tariffs and protect Canadian jobs. So I encourage all MPs to fight the tariffs and stand up for Canada.
Okay, good message there from Pierre Poilievre talking for the Conservative Party of Canada about the Jamil Jivani situation going down to the States. Feel however you want about it. I personally don't have an opinion on it. I think that it's good that we're having a conversation with the Americans. I think we need to have a conversation with the Americans, and I think we need adults to do it. Jamil, not ideal in that he's not empowered to actually make a deal. Now, he did offer to facilitate a meeting in Washington with the Prime Minister. And I'm not sure why the Prime Minister wouldn't take him up on that unless he's just worried that it would work. And I really don't think, I truly believe, right now, Mark Carney does not want to deal with the Americans. He wants to continue on the other way, the way he talked about in Davos, where Canada's part of the one world government and the U.S. is basically on their own. He wants to make deals with middle powers. I mean, hey, that's his philosophy on it. It's not doing anything, though, for us here at home. The cost of living is going up. Immigration is still a problem. Crime is still a problem. We've got a lot of issues. Jobs is the most recent pressing one. Inflation's out of control. Our economy's in the tank. I mean, there's a lot of issues here at home. And the Prime Minister, he thinks his way is the better way to get Canada out of this. And I just think that we should drill. I think we should build pipelines. I think we should get the best of what Canada has to offer out to market. I feel that way. It makes sense to me. Anyway, speaking of the Prime Minister, let's move on to him to wrap things up. Yesterday, he announced a new defense procurement project. Basically, what he's doing is he has aligned us with the Europeans, and he wants to do some defense spending with them and have them do some buying from us.
Recruitment to the Canadian Armed Forces is up by 13% since June. We've signed a series of new defense and security partnerships with allies who share our interests, who share our values and our history. And that includes the landmark SAFE agreement with the EU that the Minister of National Defense, still have your pen, that he signed with the European Union last week. Crucially, we have committed to double our defense expenditures by the end of this decade. And that amounts to an additional $80 billion over the next 5 years. In addition, as part of our NATO commitments, we will invest an additional $45 billion per year on domestic resilience, yielding both security and economic benefits. In total, over the next decade, Canada will invest $180 billion directly in defense procurement, $290 billion in defense and security-related infrastructure, and create over $125 billion in additional downstream economic benefits.
That is just a jaw-dropping amount of money, isn't it? That is just a staggering amount of money. Let me ask a question. Where's the money coming from? Are we raising taxes substantially? Or are we going to print more money for this? Where is the money coming from? Well over $100 billion he wants to spend on defense. And let me just put out a counterpoint here. One of the things that's on the table when we do a deal with the Americans is we get very, very integrated when it comes to supply chains, when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to a lot of different things. We get very, very intimately integrated with the Americans again, more so even than we were. But they handle the defense and we save $145 billion. Does that make sense? Could we come to a deal with the Americans? They'll defend North America. They're going to do their Golden Dome thing. We don't have to spend infinite amounts of money that we currently don't have on things that arguably aren't relevant or necessary. the defense spending here is a lot of it's going to be here in Canada. Are we making the war weapons of the future here, though? Or is the bulk of the technology coming out of America? Let me give you an example. There's some people who feel that Canada should cancel its F-35 fighter jet procurement program because we shouldn't be spending money with the American military complex. They think we should cancel it and go with a Gripen fighter jet, which is something that's made over in Europe. Well, here's the problem. Well, the Gripen is cheaper. It's not the same jet. It doesn't do the same thing. The F-35 is a stealth fighter. Maximum protection for our Air Force. The Gripen doesn't have stealth. We're basically painting targets in the sky with our pilots in them. Do we want to save money? Or do we want the best available technology and war machinery for our women and men of the armed forces? Is the future in tanks and armored vehicles? Because it seems like that's what we're going to be building a lot of. I don't know. A lot of people would say the future is in robotics and drones. That's how future wars are going to get fought. They might make the case wars are going to get fought from space. Are we really any better off because we're building, I don't know, tanks and armored personnel carriers? Maybe. I really don't know. I'm not an expert on this topic. I'm just thinking about that staggering amount of money that the Prime Minister is committing us to here. And I'm asking, do we need to spend it? And where is the money coming from?
To those ends, as the Minister mentioned, we are announcing Canada's first ever defence industrial strategy. It's a bold plan to get our armed forces what they need when they need it. It's a bold plan to scale Canadian defence companies and to put hundreds of billions of dollars into strategic sectors of our economy while creating over 125,000 high-paying jobs across Canada. Its framework is simple: build, partner, buy. First, we will build in Canada and prioritize Canadian companies. As a matter of policy, military procurement in areas where we have sovereign capabilities will be directed to Canadian firms first. Where we can't build alone, we will partner with like-minded allies, helping to attract investment, transfer intellectual property, and integrate supply chains so that public dollars flow back to Canada and Canadian jobs created right here. And only after exhausting those first two options will we buy from abroad. Even then, we will ensure the maximum benefits are returned to Canada throughout the value chain, including through a modernized industrial and technological benefits regime. The centerpiece of our new approach is the Defence Investment Agency, or DIA. The DIA will streamline and speed procurement. It will cut red tape, and it will expand domestic production. It has three fundamental objectives. First, to protect Canada's sovereignty, particularly in the Arctic, by ensuring our women and men in uniform have the tools they need to defend our country. Secondly, the DIA will work to build Canadian prosperity. And thirdly, will work to strengthen Canada's strategic autonomy, which means our ability to act independently in a more dangerous world. We start by defending Canadians. And the truth is, over the last few decades, Canada has neither spent enough on our defence nor invested enough in our defence industries. We've relied too heavily on our geography and others to protect us. And this has created vulnerabilities that we can no longer afford and dependencies that we can no longer sustain.
Okay, I mean, there it is, right there from the Prime Minister. I don't know if this is the right track that he is on. I mean, it all sounds nice, and it makes sense. Yeah, we should try and make sure that we get maximum benefit. We should, if we're going to have this industrial military complex that we're building here in Canada, it makes sense that we would employ Canadians, and Canadians would enjoy the benefit of that. I just frankly don't see it happening. We've created another bureaucracy. The defense, what agency? The DIA, is that what he said? I still don't understand what they do. And he explained perfectly what they do, but I still don't get what they do. Another bureaucracy with very well-paid executives and consultants and so on and so forth, whose only mandate, it seems, is to go out and spend money. Does it really need to be that way? What was wrong with just Canadian Armed Forces? Get a budget, buy what you need, stay within your budget, and shop Canadian wherever possible. But make sure that our women and men of the armed forces have the appropriate technology that they need to keep them safe and to be competitive with the rest of the world, particularly our adversaries. Time will tell. Frankly, I'm not sure how this is going to put food on the table for Canadian families, though. I'm glad that we're meeting our NATO spending commitments. I'm glad the Prime Minister acknowledged that we have been underspending. It's good that he seems focused on this. It seems like a hell of a lot of money to spend and questionable results. I'm not even 100% sure what the goal is here. But anyway, regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with anything I've said in this podcast, I hope you enjoyed the fact that you got a lot of audio. You heard from the leaders in their own words, and you heard about 1,000% more in this pod than you would have heard if you had just watched the 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock news last night. That's what I endeavor to do. Bring you the leaders with all the context and all of the clarity you need to decide how you feel about a particular issue. Thanks for checking into this episode of Scott Fox After 9, friends. I appreciate you. There's another new episode coming your way tomorrow. I'm going to try and circle back on the Bill C-11 conversation that I started yesterday and whatever else comes up today. Good luck to Canada at the Olympics, and I will see you in just under 24 hours.